Hey guys, this is Calm. I'm doing the second round of the FIDE World Rapid 2013. Mamedyarov is white, and he is playing... I'm going to go with N-Win. Uh, Win spelled Nguyen. That's my best guess at pronouncing it. This game is 15 minutes to start each, and it's 10 seconds increment per move. I haven't seen this game before. I'm not using an engine. It's just going to be the same as the last one, essentially. The reason I'm doing this is because I personally like Mamedyarov's style as white. I know that when I've been checking out lines, kind of learning d4, his games have tended to be of a style which I think I would like to adopt, and I know he wins this tournament, and I feel that I can learn something by looking at his games in this tournament, and I'm going to try and pick up elements from his style just by going through them and trying to, just have them ingrained into my mind somehow to hope that I'm learning something. And hopefully you do too. So his opponent is 26-25, so he's got about 130 rating point advantage, so he's definitely going to be trying to win as white in this game. So he opens d4, which I'm glad to see, because, if he played e4 it kind of ruined my whole theory, but this is, knight f6 is played, c4, and c5. Okay, so what I've been doing recently is just playing d5 here. I've pretty much always played that just because I used to play the Monbenoni as black for a bit. I experimented with some Banco Gambit as well. Didn't particularly think it was, I don't know, I was too materialistic for it basically. It's an okay opening, but it's not played at the high levels very often. And generally, I think that's probably for a reason. Okay, d5. Okay, so it's going to be a Banco Gambit. So the idea here, from black's point of view, is we take away this c4 pawn of white's, and then after the takes he plans to play a6, and then in the most simple lines white just takes it, black recaptures with, say, the bishop, usually, and then he plays a setup with d6, g6, bishop g7, castles, that kind of thing. And the idea is that from this open b file, he eventually transitions his pieces to this rook here, comes to the b file, and along with the a pawn not being here because we've traded this off after c takes b and b takes a. These two rooks along this central file combined with the bishop on g7, they put on a lot of pressure on this b2 pawn, and if ever you have something like b3, it's just kind of awkward because this a2 pawn can become weak because this file is open also. It's very awkward to play b3 in general just because of this bishop looks down to the a1 rook, and black is basically relying on that kind of counterplay to be worth the pawn. Sometimes it is, sometimes it's not. Personally here I've actually been playing queen c2, which is kind of a sideline, and then you play, after takes, just e4, which supports your central pawn. The e4 is protected from the queen, and then your bishop can just recapture on c4. You don't win a pawn like you do in the main line, but you avoid all the theory, and you just have a solid center. You'll have more of the center, because you have e4 and d5 pawns, whereas black doesn't have any. And your pieces are in more normal positions. I also feel like with the queen on c2 you can play b3 and bishop b2 very quickly, which kind of nullifies this g7 bishop. And then just kind of later on we're working on just having this big center. Maybe we're looking for an f4 e5 push, just coming through the center, and that center is going to give us more space, which is going to give us more room to play, and just a small advantage based on that. But it's much more of a positional thing as opposed to a outright win more material thing, which, for example, my friend Fusion, who I've done videos with in the past, is pretty materialistic, so he could be going straight after that. I'm very happy with it, but it just doesn't fit my style at the moment. Okay, so he actually plays queen c2. Somewhat surprising. I think normally at the main lines you see, I remember there was a Shirov line where he takes on b5 here, Then after a6 he actually plays b6, so he gives the pawn back, but he does it in a different way. In that line, black generally plays queen takes b6 or like bd7 and takes with the knight. But by playing this pawn to a6 and white giving back the pawn, black's counterplay is kind of slowed down because he can't play like the bishop to a6, like we mentioned before, or have this open rook. So it slows him down, but it does give the pawn back. So that's another way to do it. Maybe it is the case that the main line is meant to be fine for black at the moment, which is maybe why Mamedyarov's avoided it. Anyway, that's pretty interesting to me, and hopefully he plays exactly the same line as me, because then I hopefully might have some more knowledge. So I play e4 here, yeah. Okay, so e6 immediately, and then, because obviously we're putting pressure on this pawn, if we don't do anything, black can take it twice. Generally we go about trying to protect that. We just play a normal developing move like knight c3, and you may think after, say, bishop a6, this pawn is protected, but long term that's not an issue, because it's very hard to support this pawn after something like queen a4, because black can't get another piece to support it. Okay, so knight c3 is played, bishop e7. Bishop e7 is particularly weird in this line. Pretty much you always put on g7, and so I'd imagine that the black player, because he's obviously still a stronger master at 26-25, he's he's looked at the line, and this is just something he'll be playing against this sideline as opposed to the main line. So white just takes on c4. Black could have tried to delay this with like bishop a6 first, but maybe it is just the case to say queen a4 and there's not much going on. This knight would support e4 now, so yeah. Castles, knight e2. The reason we play knight e2 here as opposed to knight f3, which may look more normal for some people, is because we've already developed this bishop, so we don't have to worry about it, and it's going to allow us to push our f-pawn in future. Now, I mentioned earlier about f4, e5, d6 pushes, like gaining space. In this scenario, f3 can also be a good move, because this bishop here might want to go to e3 to hit the c5 pawn, or it might want to go to, say, g5, or even f4 itself. So basically we're keeping our options open with this bishop, and we're keeping our options open with this pawn. Because if we play knight f3, yeah, it's not blocking this bishop, but if we play f4, for example, it is blocking this bishop and it limits our squares. Basically what I'm trying to say is the most harmonious way to set up is probably bishop e3 and f3, because f3 is going to stop knight g4 moves, and it's going to later leave us open for an f4 push as well, like f3 to f4, which if we put this knight on f3, we wouldn't be able to do that later f-pawn push unless we move this knight again. Because black takes, I'd imagine white takes back with the e-pawn, and the reason for this is because, I guess you can do anything, but I'd say the e-pawn is most accurate because it blocks the c6 square for this knight, and that makes black's development slightly more awkward. It also leaves this e4 pawn, not pawn but square, open for, say, a white knight in the future. Basically long term, black is probably going to play something like d6, and having both the c6 and the e6 squares covered by a pawn gets rid of two pretty useful squares for white defensively when he has left space, like he will do with white's pawn on d5 and his on d6. Okay, white does recapture that way. So d6 is played, castles, knight bd7, knight g3. Okay, so we're just putting this knight to a better square. I guess there's no rush on developing this bishop. You might want to wait on whether he puts on f4 or g5. e3, though, I think is less likely than it was before, now that we've taken here, because I mean, we have this problem of knight g4, and before I was suggesting we play f3 against this, when we've got a pawn on e4. But if we play f3 and our bishop is on e3 now, we have nothing on the e file essentially blocking, and this rook is likely going to come to the e file because that's far more open compared to the f where it's blocked by a pawn, and that would just weaken our kind of, e3 bishop. So I'd say the combination of knight g4 and rook e8 would dissuade me from playing bishop e3 at any point. So maybe he just wants to wait on that. Knight g3 is always going to be a useful move. It covers like the square f5, for example. We're going to play knight f5 at some point. So yeah, it's a normal move, I guess. Just waiting on the bishop development. So knight b6. We have a couple of options here. We can play b3, which supports the bishop, so if black takes it, we can take back with a pawn. Then we're going to have kind of mirrored pawn structure, which may be slightly better for white because we've got this extra space. Or we might play something like bishop... well, okay, so I was going to say we could play something like bishop e5 or bishop e2 to like keep the bishop pair, but actually we can't do that because then he can take on d5, so I guess we have to play b3. Played rook e8, rook e1, bishop f8. These are all very normal moves. Bishop f8 is normal because we open up our rook and there's nowhere better for our bishop to go. You might be trying to reroute this to g7 after g6, bishop g7 later on because this diagonal is quite open. Bishop f4. So we're connecting our rooks here. Another option is bishop g5 just because it puts this queen in kind of pin. Long term, attacking this backwards d6 pawn is going to be good, but I'm not particularly sure as to why bishop g5 like isn't a better move there. Because bishop g5 with a combination of like knight h5 when this is pinned could be quite nice to damage the pawn structure. I should say that at this time control, 15 minutes plus 10 seconds a move, these players aren't going to be playing the absolute best moves in all situations, but I imagine the openings themselves are very solid. Just because players at this level generally have their openings down, they know the theory, and they can just, whip it out, basically. Trade of rooks. When you have less space and you're defending, trading is generally a good option for the defender because it takes away pieces from the attack. That said, this here was not really a quick attack or anything, so I'm not sure that black had to play that immediately, but it might be the best move, I'm just saying. Because from my perspective here, this rook is in a quite good position, this rook is in quite good position, this rook isn't, this rook isn't. By trading we allow white to get his bad rook into the good position, and ours is still in a bad if we're black. So, I'm not sure. Maybe there's something I'm missing. So rook b8, good in the main lines. Here we've still got, this b3, bishop c4 setup, so it doesn't really offer much here. So I'm not sure why that was played immediately. h3. Okay, so that makes more sense, yeah. Because he's planning to trade this knight for this bishop, this is going to open up the b file after the attack. It's like this rook becomes open. So that makes sense. Why he didn't play it immediately, I'm not sure. To me, the most logical move order for that would be knight takes first, but I guess it doesn't make any difference. So we have this trade, and queen d7. Queen d7 tells me that he doesn't want to be in this pin, and he wants to have enough coverage over the f5 square to stop like knight f5, which I guess in combination with bishop f4 puts more pressure on this. Maybe that's why bishop f4 was played immediately. White, obviously a much better player than myself, can see that this situation is more likely to arise and things like that. And that could be awkward. for black to deal with. But like knight b5 as well, that would be 3 pieces after knight f5 attacking this d6 square. So maybe that's why. Also by playing this, he limits the development of his own light square bishop, but this can go to bishop a6 in the future, so I imagine it's not an issue. Okay, knight c4. He's trading a pair of knights. He's going to be attacking d6 an extra time. Basically, he's figured that if he can't go to f5, well then the other square the knight can attack this pawn is via e4. I would say that by trading out this piece, he's going to eventually have one less attacker, but maybe that's not an issue. I can't particularly see anything better in this position, so maybe white just thinks the trading a pair of knights is good because we get this pressure on here, and the alternative was to not get any pressure and just keep an extra pair of knights each. So maybe he thought he wasn't getting anywhere with that, whereas here he gets like some kind of slow pressure. I would say that actually having this knight on e4 is very annoying, because as I mentioned before, we want to play this g6 bishop d7 as black, because obviously this is a nice long open file, open diagonal rather, and if he plays g6 now, we have knight f6 check picking up the queen. Also this bishop is very pinned to d6 now, so it's just it's keeping this bishop tied down directly. See, that's the kind of thing where on the board I would probably not have realised the complexities of like playing this knight e4 move. I might have played it just because there's not many moves in the position, but I wouldn't have had the true understanding that quite clearly I can see after going a couple of moves ahead that Mamedyarov has here. So okay, bishop a6 is played, which is logical. f5 square not important anymore because this knight is moved, can't go to it. So he's just developing this bishop, and he's doing so by attacking c4. It's defended by the queen at the moment, but it's fine. That said, I mean, knight takes c5 here. Yeah, so another part of this is running knight takes c5, and if black recaptures, obviously bishop hits the rook. So I'd expect something like, I mean, queen c7 here, or you know, a rook move, maybe like rook b4 maybe. The idea of rook b4 is you put pressure on the c4, you can combine that with bishop a6. It prevents this knight takes c5. But he's just played bishop a6. This kind of, maybe I've missed some things. No, okay, so knight takes c5 is played, and this forks the bishop and the queen. And black can't really recapture because he's just going to lose it. So I guess maybe his idea here is queen c8. And then he's got like 2 attackers on c4, but again, white can just kind of take on a6, and after the recapture he's just a pawn down. Okay, queen c8 was played. I mean, it's the only move really. But yeah, white just takes on a6. Now white is a pawn up. White's bishop is still much better than black's. You can play like a move like c5 now, and the idea here is that this is still pinned, and once black hasn't played taking, he's just played some random move. White can then decide to either take on d6 or push c6, which is probably the more tempting the position because this bishop is still tied up, and we're going to be able to push this pawn as a passer, you know. Okay, so c5 was played. Queen a5 is played. We're hitting our rook here. We'll have to move that somewhere. Rook d1 is good because it supports this pawn. If black ever manages to take this pawn, then we can push our d pawn. That said, if we're pushing our c pawn, our d pawn's kind of blocked, so in that scenario maybe rook c1 would have been better, but we'll see. I don't want to take too long in these videos because I'm aware that anything that goes over X amount of time, people will probably not want to invest their time watching these videos. I mean, I think ideally videos would be like 15 minutes long, which is why I do live commentaries sometimes, but at the same time, I don't particularly think you get as much out of those videos, and I guess what I want to do is I want to be learning, but I'm making the videos because I want to help other people too. And obviously I put them out for free. I mean, I did a couple of paid videos, but they got very few views, so it just really wasn't worth it, financially, for me to do them. And I felt like a lot of people who would otherwise watch my content, didn't. So it's just, I would rather give, free value and feel like I'm, helping people in some way. I mean, obviously it's not like saving their lives or anything, but, in the sake of, improving a chess or giving them some enjoyment, hopefully enjoy them anyway. Okay, so queen b4 was played. So this is our bishop. So we're going to move that. Keeping this pin is probably quite valuable, so I'd imagine just bishop g3, which is usually better than h2 because we just want late game just to have this back rank where we can play king h2. Whereas if we put our bishop on h2, obviously we're kind of leaving ourselves open to a back rank mate because it blocks out our king. Bishop g3 was played. h5 played now. Just kind of opens the same back rank thing for black, but seems overly aggressive to me. I think black knows that he is in trouble. He's just going for some quick counterplay. His idea is that he can push h4 and it's supported by the queen, but it looks to me like black's in quite a bit of trouble with these pawns. c6 was played, as I mentioned earlier. h4. Now you play bishop h2 just because it's the only move. Rook e8 is played. If you're not careful, black can play, check here. Only move is takes, and then queen recaptures, and we've got that back rank mate I was just talking about. So king h1, I'd imagine, just because then you can use this bishop to defend the g2 square. It's better than other moves because if we play something like g3, black captures. And if we capture with our bishop, we have two pawn islands here on f2 and h3, and the g-file is open, which means it's much easier for black to go for repetition draws, because he can get either a rook or a queen on that file and check. And if we take with our pawn, it opens up this dark diagonal, which again is awkward. And if he plays something like g3, h takes, f takes, it also means that we don't have a pawn in g2. So although we have this diagonal along the dark squares, we also have this diagonal, like e4, f3, g2 on the light squares, which is open, which is awkward to block sometimes. That said, I believe white would still be much better and winning in both positions, but I imagine most accurate is king h1, which is played. So queen a5 is played. Black's just trying to cover these, squares at the back to stop this pawn promoting. f3 is played now. That's clever because what he's doing there is allowing himself to play bishop g1. And compared to this, which is now blunted out by this pawn, he's going to have a lot more squares for his bishop to look at. He can combine that with, say, queen f2, put a lot of pressure on this a7 pawn. If he ties his rook to this pawn, also defending, because the bishop's very out of action at the moment, then he's going to be able to do things like push c7, c8, and as soon as he moves to capture this pawn, he'll be able to capture the a pawn, stay up a pawn, but have traded another one there. Okay, so bishop e7 is played. That's a good idea from black because he's trying to free up this bishop if white ever moves from this diagonal to be able to put it on, say, b6 or c7 to block this more. Queen e4 is played. Pins this bishop. g6. And the other option is like king f8, but that is kind of dangerous. King f8 idea being you're supporting this rook and you can move this bishop. But then I think something like queen h7 is probably very dangerous because we're threatening just queen h8 mate. And if this bishop moves off this diagonal, then we can take on h4. It also gives support to this d5 pawn, which may be like a prime idea. And that's because it frees up this rook to like penetrate via, let's say, the 7th rank, or just put on the d-file itself, or something like that. We do give right 2 pawn here. I'm guessing that white is figuring that it's not at all important, which may be the case. And actually looking at it again, if he takes on a2, you can play bishop takes d6, and this is pinned. And then we'd just be trading with 2 connected pass pawns with no opposing pawns. It would just be a very easy win because we just push the pawns. So white probably has to do something to stop bishop takes d6. Okay, so he plays g6. Bishop f4 is played. I wonder why he didn't take on d6. Looking at it quickly, I don't know. I don't want to put the engine on for like throughout this. We'll have a look at the end. But yeah, I'm not sure. So bishop f4, there must be some reason behind it. And now rook c8. So just e7 just hangs. So he takes it. So I don't get that. That doesn't make any sense to me. Maybe they had no time at this period. And that could explain bishop f4 as well, because it's just forcing black to make a move. And I mean, it shouldn't be the case that he's in Zugzwang, because he can play like queen c7 and back. So I don't really know. Bishop f4, rook c8, takes on e7, so he's up like a full piece. And okay, that's why. So queen a4 hits the bishop and the rook. So that's why he realised he could play queen c8. I missed that. You know, so shame on me. Rook b1 is played. I like this move because he's threatening to come to b7. This is going to tie up the f7 pawn, and it's going to allow for pushing this pawn easily as well via c7 and rook b8. So queen take at f4, queen d7, forcing this rook to move first. It's kind of like an in-between move. Rook f8 is played. Now he just plays c7. It's wrong to queen next move. And I guess white here has to play queen f5. And then after the trade, pawn structure is just a mess. White's going to play rook b8, so I imagine that's what we're going to see. And no more moves, so yeah, black resigned here. So yeah, I mean, it's a nice move. Let's go back to that bit then. Let's put an engine on. Okay, so I've got the moves in the engine up now. So you can see from this that white's just really winning. I said I didn't understand why not bishop takes d6. Seems like that was the best move, but everything's very clearly winning. After bishop f4, there are no moves for black, essentially. He's gone for this rook c8, and then, I mean, I don't know. So basically my move wasn't bad, it's, which is what I was worried about originally, where I was like, why hasn't he played that, but it's okay. And then, just shooting through the engine. You can't see this, but it's pretty much even all this time. Okay, so here's the situation. I was talking about bishop g5 here. Computer thinks it's fine. Thinks it's basically the same as bishop f4. Same evaluation, so that was clearly fine. Takes. Yeah, so in this position was something I said I didn't know, like, if I'd have played knight e4. I imagine why I would have played as bishop g5, just because it looks like the most logical, like dislodging this knight. But it does seem that by a little bit, the knight e4 is a better plan. And it's probably much more practical as well, because it just gets this long-term weakness on d6. And yeah, I talked before about this. I mean, I didn't see it immediately, but then again, I am making commentary, and I know we're near as good a player as these guys, and I still kind of picked it up. So I would imagine, I mean, we don't have the times here, but I would imagine that black was pretty low on time here, because I don't see how you could miss that at their level. So bishop a6, knight takes c5. Now the computer's just +2, so it's basically over. And this is all as per configuration. Black's just kind of trying, but it's over. So yeah, bishop takes d6, and we looked at this already, so I'll stop the engine there. So I hope you like that game. Let me know what you think, and I will see you guys next time.